Hey guys, what's up? It's Pop Rocks. I've been trying to make this video for a few days now. It's going to be about Aqua. It's like a hero concept because honestly, I think a character like this with a melee looking weapon at least and being Chinese themed and then also water themed, I think he has potential for lore and also like abilities. I didn't really give him any Chinese theming, but that's because I went so in on the water. So yeah, I just want to get that out of the way. I am a little sick, so if I sound weird, that's why. But yeah, let's get on with the video. So I'm going to start with my goals for this concept. I want to utilize his staff, obviously, water abilities, and then I wanted it to have not a generic cooldown function like every other hero does, really. And then I want sort of a light on his feet feeling, so a bit of mobility and kind of like that sort of pizzazz that would get a Lucio player, for instance, kind of interested in playing Aqua instead of just Lucio. So yeah, those are kind of like my goals going into this, for you to kind of make predictions on what abilities or what type of abilities I would give him. Now on to Aqua's passives. Obviously he's got the support passive, but then another passive I'm giving him is called Water Walker. Basically, if you know Luna Snow, this is going to sound very familiar. If Aqua is moving and has not used any of his abilities, he will move faster. He'll go from 5.5 meters per second to 6 meters per second. So like Genji and Tracer. I did this because I wanted him, because I think it's kind of weird how none of the other roles have anybody that moves just a little bit faster, like Genji and Tracer do for the DPS, but for like the tanks and support, nobody does. Obviously, that's because Juno, Lucio, Doom, Wrecking Ball. But I thought it'd be interesting if we give them sort of a way to basically, just like in base, move a little faster. And then his final passive is called Tide. Now, I did see this on Reddit, and I did really like it, so I took inspiration for the name and the general theme, which is like Thor or Mantis, where their whole kit revolves around these Tide charges, aside from like their primary fire, for instance. So yeah. Basically, Tide charges will work like this. Instead of using traditional cooldowns, Aqua will use Tide charges. He'll have 4 charges, and he'll recharge at 1 Tide per 3 seconds, and doing damage will also recharge his Tide at 0.5 Tide charges per 50 damage. This is so, like, he's not fully reliant on just, like, waiting for his cooldowns to come back, because that would defeat the whole purpose of the Tide charges if he just has to wait for them like their armor packs, but for all of his abilities. But yeah, those are his passives, and real quick, we'll just hit on his health. He'll have 225 HP because he does move a little bit quicker than most, and because he'll also have a movement ability. So I decided giving him a little bit less health than average would probably be for the best. Next up is Aqua's primary fire. Now, this was probably the hardest thing on this list to name, like in this concept to name, just because I don't know if there's a specific type of real world staff this is based off of, or if it is a completely new one. So I tried to go with my best bet of what they would call it. So what I just called it was augmented bow staff, to go with the pretty augmented biotic, you know, the general naming themes for the primary fires or abilities. So basically, with his augmented bow staff, he'll use his bow staff to hit enemies in a melee range, so think like Brig, Reinhardt, probably more Brig range because I think she has less range than Ryan. His attacks will be in a 3-hit combo, so it'll be like a left, right, and then he'll bring it above his head and like slam it into the ground. And the last hit that'll strike the ground in front of him will do a small AoE of damage in front of him to like make, so like the first two have to be pretty spot on, like pretty generally on your target, but then that last one will be a little AoE to hit multiple people. That's like the general idea for that. His secondary fire, also called the augmented bow staff, it'll just be like second, kind of like how the scopes are. A handle will like flick out of his staff for him to grab, and then he can shoot water out of the tip of his staff that'll heal allies in a line in front of him or wherever he's aiming. This ability, just think Jeff's healing, but more smaller range, since Overwatch definitely wouldn't go with that much range like Jeff has in Marvel Rivals, because Jesus, that boy got range on him. That's generally how it would look in game. Moving on to Aqua's ability 1, I called it Torrenting Ring. Obviously, there could probably be better names, but hey, that's what I thought of. Basically, Aqua will sacrifice one of his Tide charges to use this ability. When this ability is activated, Aqua will like release a pulse of water around him to push enemies back, and then he'll put healing rings of water around his allies to slowly heal them. If he uses this multiple times, It will not stack, it'll just refresh the duration of the healing. And I want to say he will not move, because visually it'll look like Alari's, just with water, but he will not move. So yeah, that's the idea for that. But there's more to his ability. One, if he holds the ability rather than just press it, he'll condense water into his hands and then blast it on the ground below him to blast him upwards, and it'll make the healing ring activation radius smaller. So let's say he would pulse out normally on cart, right? And then any ally within 8 meters of him would get the little healing rings, right? But let's say then, instead of that, he just holds it and blasts himself upwards. Now it's more like 3 meters or something around him, like around where the water is going from. Then allies will get it in that 3 meters rather than 8. Hopefully I articulated that well, so it makes sense. But yeah, that's his first ability. On to Aqua's second ability, I call it Eroding Downpour. Basically, Aqua will sacrifice a Tide Charge to use this ability. Aqua will aim at an enemy and activate this ability to create a rain cloud above that enemy, and it'll affect enemies around this one, including them, within a radius of 5 meters. I'm just giving you numbers because I didn't write these numbers down. The rain cloud gives enemies a soaked condition and will make them receive more damage and slow them down. That is what the soaked condition is. So basically, let's say it increases the damage you receive if you're affected by it by 20%, and it slows you by 10%, right? So it's minor things, but that 20% is going to get you, so you better go hide or get your condition off of you. Which the condition would only last for 2.53 seconds because of the potential it has to be very strong if you affect the whole team. So then it won't last for very long after you leave the radius of the rain cloud. But yeah, that's the idea, to give him something that's crowd control without outwardly crowd controlling, you know? But yeah, I see this as potential to spice up gameplay while also adding a new condition to the game, which, aside from hinder, we haven't really had a new condition in a little while, so I think this would be a fun idea. Finally, for Aqua's final ability, his ultimate, we have Crashing Tidal Wave. I was initially going to call it Tidal Wave, but then I went with Crashing Tidal Wave, and honestly, I'm just not good at naming ultimates very well, especially when they're pretty simple overall. It's just trying to get a creative name out. Basically, Aqua will spin his augmented bow staff around, in the movies. It'll be in front of him. He'll spin it, then around his back, and then in front of him, and he'll grab it and slam an end of it into the ground. That'll cause a tidal wave to erupt from behind him and go in a straight line. Now, I'm gonna try to say this as well as I can. Allies caught in this tidal wave will be burst healed and then receive a movement speed boost while the tidal wave, after the tidal wave passes through them. And then for these allies, the tidal wave will be mostly transparent, so they can see through it for the most part. Let's say it's 20% opacity, aside from the very edges, so that way you know where it starts and ends. But for enemies, they will receive the soaked condition, like we stated previously with our ability 1 and 2, and then they cannot see through this tidal wave. So it is 100% opacity. So again, it's like crowd control without outward crowd control. It makes it to where enemies either go straight into the fight blindly, reposition completely, or just wait for it to pass. I saw this as an idea because without actually moving them, how else could you really make a tidal wave scary for the enemies, especially if it doesn't do damage either? Well, give them a condition that they already know will be hurtful, and blind them without a blind, like in Marvel Rivals, with Cloak's blind. That would suck. Or like Valorant, that would suck. But if we do it like this, where it's just like a wall moving at you, it's a little different, because it has to make them think. But yeah, that's Aqua's ultimate. Usually at this point we would be done, but Overwatch has introduced perks, and thankfully I was able to think of some perks right before making this video. So we're going to get onto his perks, starting with his minor perks. His first minor perk, I call it Weathering Storms. Basically, Aqua's Eroding Downpour ability will gain 2 charges, but is half as effective and does not stack. So what do I mean by that? Well, basically, there are 2 ways we can make it half as effective. Make it last even less time when exiting his rain clouds, or make it to where it is like instead of 10%, 20% and 10%, it's now 10% and 5%, you know? But he does have 2 charges, so he can make it encompass a wider area or multiple areas. So I thought it was a good, give and take kind of thing there. With his second minor perk, okay, I did not know what to call this, so I just went with the first thing that came to mind: support, not healer. Basically, Aqua's augmented bow staff primary fire will get increased range. So let's say it had 5 meter range, now it has 8 meter range, but his healing range is reduced, his little Jeff spray. So let's say, right, his primary goes from 5 meters to 8 meters, and his spray goes from 30 meters to like 20 meters or 22 meters. So it's like a big jump forward, but also a big jump back with his ranges. I thought this would be interesting just because, if you're going to have a melee support hero and, they need to do damage to get their abilities back, you might as well have something in here that lets them get that increased range on their melee. But, I want to hear your thoughts on these minor perks because this is my first time making perks. But with that, let's get on to our next perks, which are the major perks. Now, for his first major perk, I really do like this. It's called Poseidon's Wrath. Basically, when Aqua uses his crashing tidal wave, it'll summon 2 smaller waves, but here's the kicker. The second wave, so one wave will still come from behind him, but the second wave will appear behind the closest enemy within LOS. So let's say it's their tank, right? Their tank is here, their supports and DPS are a little bit further back. That second tidal wave will also it'll just summon right behind the tank and instantly hit them. But if they're all grouped together, then it could hit all of them because it spawns in on top of them. I thought this would be a cool way to make it to where it's oh shit, there's a tidal wave in front of us and behind us. So our tank's already got the soak condition. They're gonna get it refreshed again, even if we cleanse it or it runs out, and then we might get it. We gotta skedaddle, And since it doesn't do damage, I thought this would be even more so a way we could augment his ultimate, since there's no way for you to burst damage them with only the ultimate. And for his second major perk, I called it Cleansing Bubble. Basically, Aqua's Torrenting Ring now requires 2 tide charges, but it'll create a big bubble with constant healing, and all debuffs are reduced by half when an ally enters the bubble. Now, what do I mean by this? Well, let's say, right, an Ana sleeps your tank, and your tank falls off of high ground into your bubble. Well, tanks already have sleep done by half, so instead of 5 seconds, it's 3.5 for them, or 2.5, whatever it was. Now, it'll be even less, so it'll only be 1 second they're asleep. Or if you're antied, it won't cleanse your anti, but it'll reduce the current duration of the anti by half. So let's say you're antied, right? You enter your Aqua's cleansing bubble. Instead of being on you for 3 seconds, it's now 1.5 seconds, and it's done way sooner. I thought this was a fun way to give somebody else a cleansing ability, or cleansing-esque ability, without outright giving them a cleanse and a burst heal. Because that's what I didn't like about Kiriko. There's a cleanse, an intangible, a burst heal. So this is a good way to give it a big AoE and still be effective and dynamic, but also impactful, I thought these were really fun for perks. But yeah, seriously, let me know what you guys think in the comments. I want feedback on if these were too strong, if the minors were too minor, if the majors were too major or too minor, I just want feedback for all these things. But yeah, we still have one more segment for this video. I know this is usually longer than most of my hero concept videos, but I swear it'll be worth it. Now, Aqua has many possible lore connections I see, and I have 2 major categories. The first category is going to be the Martins, the Martins, if you know who I'm talking about. If you don't, these 2 have taken in Lifeweaver, and Soldier and Lifeweaver had an interaction about that, oh, you're lucky the Martins took you in when they did. And he's like, I'm just glad they even took in a street like me at all, or it was something like that. But yeah, you know why I see this being a possibility? Because they work on the Antarctic arcology. And if you don't know, the Antarctic arcology is coming very soon. I forget if it was season 18, season 17, or season 16, but it is coming. Now, Here are exactly what I think Aqua's connections to this pair of men could be. Also, I didn't realize they were married. I thought they were brothers. But no, they're married. So yeah, they're a gay couple. Anyway, Aqua could be somebody who worked with the Martinses on the Atlantic arcology, or he could be an adoptive son of the couple, and he took an interest in their aquatic research. This is very possible in my head, because this would just be fun. You know, we haven't had anybody who is in this sort of situation. Another possibility could be Aqua could know Soldier and Lifeweaver due to the shared connection to this couple of researchers. So he might know Lifeweaver personally, even, because Lifeweaver does actually live at the Antarctic arcology, or at least stayed there for a little while. He shows up every now and then because of his connection to the couple. And so, if Aqua is also there, they could know each other. I just think it's like too convenient that the arcology is going to come out in Aqua season or right before Aqua, and Aqua has to do with water. The other main umbrella category could be Ecopoint Atlantic, or Atlantic Ocean, whatever they would want to call it. I say this because we only know of Ecopoint Antarctica, but we know there's gotta be plenty. I bet you there's Ecopoint Amazon, Ecopoint Atlantic, Pacific, probably Ecopoint Outback, probably Ecopoint Death Valley, these hot places, these wild places, jungles, oceans, Ecopoint Mariana Trench. It could be anything. Ecopoint North Pole, South Pole, whatever, right? There could be so many Ecopoints. So Ecopoint Atlantic makes sense. He could be a member of one of the former Overwatch Ecopoints, his being stationed the Atlantic, obviously. Or, and then another possibility is due to the Petrus Act, maybe he changed the name, or it has been changed into the Atlantic arcology to the public, but they could still be taking in the data and giving it to the world, or even Overwatch specifically, so people know how they're affecting the oceans. And then why he's a fighter, I also have in here, maybe he had to invent or innovate on experimental technology to defend his data and or stop illegal poaching or sewage spilling when it comes to the Atlantic Ocean. I think the possibilities for Aqua just being water themed alone is kind of insane. He could be put anywhere. He could be put in Asia. He could be put in North America, Canada. He could be put Europe. He could be put South Africa. It doesn't matter. He could be put anywhere near water or on the water. And so I think this is very much a high possibility for him to either be related to the Martins or be related to an Ecopoint Atlantic or something along those lines. But please let me know what you think about these possible lore connections I've thought for him. Because I find it so fun, if you can't tell by how much I'm rambling about it, how fun it is to think of these lore connections or possible lore reasons for what they do and what other people do, and connections between characters. So yeah, enough with my rambling. I gotta go, so I'll see y'all on the next one. Bye-bye.